Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the complex and honestly, super misunderstood world of chronic inflammation. More importantly, we're going to decode how your everyday food choices actually impact it. We hear buzzwords thrown around constantly, right? Anti-inflammatory, gut health, wellness. But what is the hard science actually telling us? Well, let's find out. Okay, let's just tackle the elephant in the room right away. We are constantly bombarded by headlines and marketing campaigns claiming they've found it, the ultimate superfood. A rare berry from the Amazon, a specific spice, or some specialized green powder that promises to just magically cure all your inflammation overnight. But seriously, is there actually a magic bullet when it comes to your biology? The reality? It's a resounding no. But honestly, the truth is far more complex and way more empowering than some expensive powder. Because no single food determines whether your body is inflamed or healthy. Instead, the research consistently points to the overall dietary pattern you build over months and years. Every single meal you eat contributes to this entire biological environment. It's constantly interacting with your immune system, your gut microbiome, your metabolism, and yeah, even your genes. So to understand how this biological environment really works, here's our roadmap for today. We're covering 1. The superfood myth, 2. What drives inflammation, 3. Nature's anti-inflammatory foods, 4. The gut microbiome connection, 5. Why body fat matters, and finally, 6. Progress over perfection. All right, let's kick things off with section 1, the superfood myth and why context matters way more than a single food. Moving right along to section 2, what drives inflammation? Specifically, the dietary patterns linked to chronic disease. So, what exactly does an inflammatory diet look like to the researchers who actually study this stuff for a living? Well, they look at hard data. They use tools like the Dietary Inflammatory Index to track specific biomarkers in the blood. You can think of these kind of like biological smoke detectors. The main ones are C-reactive protein, or CRP, interleukin-6, or IL-6, and tumor necrosis factor alpha, or TNF-alpha. And diets that consistently spike these levels, they almost always share some very common bright red flags. We can basically think of these characteristics as the villains of inflammation. These dietary patterns are packed with industrially manufactured ultra-processed foods, liquid sugars from sweetened beverages, and a surprisingly low intake of actual, whole plant foods. And it doesn't stop at just sugar either. These diets are heavily reliant on processed meats. Think bacon and hot dogs, which contain nitrites and advanced glycation end products, or AGEs. Those are essentially harmful compounds created when protein or fat combines with sugar in your bloodstream. This whole combination is consistently linked with higher inflammation, obesity, and metabolic dysfunction. And honestly, looking at something as common as grains brilliantly illustrates the core issue here. Taking an intact whole grain and stripping it of its bran and germ to make a refined grain, like white flour, literally changes how your body reacts to it. Refined grains produce massive blood sugar spikes and starve your beneficial gut bacteria because the fiber is just entirely gone. Whole grains, on the flip side, retain all that good stuff. They provide steady energy and actually feed that crucial microbiome. Which brings us to section 3, nature's anti-inflammatory foods, the real power of whole plant foods. Okay, so we know what drives the biological alarms up. Let's flip the script. If the highly processed foods are the villains, here are the heroes. These are the vibrant, nutrient-dense foods consistently linked with lowering those inflammatory markers. We're talking about fruits like berries and citrus, vegetables like leafy greens and peppers, hearty legumes like beans and lentils, intact whole grains like oats, and healthy fats from nuts and seeds. These minimally processed plant foods provide just this remarkable variety of vitamins, minerals, and unsaturated fats that actively regulate your body's inflammatory pathways. But a huge reason these specific plant foods work so incredibly well is due to something called polyphenols. You can think of polyphenols as nature's built-in anti-inflammatory armor. They're naturally occurring compounds that originally help protect the plant itself from environmental stress. But here's the cool part. When we eat them, they help us reduce oxidative stress and regulate our own internal inflammatory pathways. And you can easily spot these powerful compounds at the grocery store. Just look for brightly colored, high-contrast foods. For instance, the anthocyanins that give blueberries and raspberries those deep red and blue hues, or the catechins found in green and black tea. And yes, you absolutely heard that right. Unsweetened dark cocoa is on the list, packed with flavonols that support your blood vessels. It is just a stunning example of how your diet directly delivers chemical instructions to your body. Let's dive deeper into that with Section 4, the gut microbiome connection, feeding your internal ecosystem. Because, these plant foods don't just act on their own once you swallow them. They have to pass through this incredible internal ecosystem first. Here is exactly how this biological partnership works. Step 1, you consume those fiber-rich plant foods we just talked about. Step 2, since you can't digest that fiber yourself, your trillions of gut bacteria step in and ferment it. Step 3, this fermentation process produces powerful compounds called short-chain fatty acids. And Step 4, these newly created fatty acids cause inflammatory signaling in your body to drop, while actively strengthening your intestinal barrier. Let's zoom in on those short-chain fatty acids for a second, or SCFAs, like butyrate, acetate, and propionate. They are absolutely critical. They act as the primary fuel to nourish the cells lining your colon. If you eat a diet low in fiber, you are literally starving these beneficial bacteria of their main fuel source. When they starve, less butyrate is produced, your gut barrier becomes weaker, and unwanted substances can literally leak into your bloodstream, kicking off a massive systemic inflammatory response. Which segues perfectly into Section 5, why body fat matters, the critical link between weight and inflammation. So, your food choices don't just affect the microscopic ecosystem in your gut, they also heavily influence the macroscopic shape of your body. Now, you might be wondering, what does the size of my waistline actually have to do with this internal engine of inflammation? Isn't fat just stored energy sitting there passively? Well, the science says absolutely not. Fat tissue is biologically active. In fact, excess body fat, particularly the visceral fat stored deep around your organs, acts almost like an active organ itself. It continuously pumps out inflammatory alarm signals called cytokines. And as excess body fat accumulates, these alarms just ring louder and louder, causing chronic inflammation throughout your entire system. So, the crucial takeaway here is that a healthy diet fights inflammation on two distinct fronts. First, directly, by delivering those amazing anti-inflammatory nutrients, polyphenols, and fiber right to your gut. Second, indirectly, because whole plant foods have a naturally lower calorie density, which supports healthy weight management. By losing that excess visceral fat, you are effectively turning off the factory that produces those inflammatory cytokines in the first place. All right, let's wrap this up with Section 6, progress over perfection, building sustainable dietary patterns. Let's bring all this science together and figure out exactly what you should take away from this explainer today to actually improve your health. What the research clearly points to is the whole food plant-based pattern. This pattern naturally checks all the boxes we've discussed. It's high in fiber, rich in phytochemicals and antioxidants, naturally lower in calorie density to help manage body fat, and it perfectly supports the diversity of your gut microbiome. Now, the goal isn't to be 100% perfect 100% of the time. Nobody is. The real goal is to consistently build an eating pattern with these traits. As the source material beautifully summarizes, the most effective anti-inflammatory strategy is not finding one magic food. It is building an overall eating pattern that consistently supports health. Rather than focusing on perfection, focus on progress. It's all about those small, consistent daily choices rather than chasing the illusion of a single superfood cure. So, I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought. Instead of stressing over every single ultra-processed thing you feel like you need to cut out of your life right now, what is one whole food? Just one extra serving of beans, colorful vegetables, or whole grains that you can add to your plate today to start fueling your microbiome. The power to change your biological environment is quite literally on your fork. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.